Hashem Yisroel.
Okie dokie. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Vogel.
Aleichem Shalom.
I want the Elam to know, I want the crowd, the audience to know that the first time we met, the first time we farbrang together was when the yeshiva came to visit Postville, I believe. The yeshiva of Minnesota came to visit Postville, Iowa. And we spent a very blizzardy Shabbos together. I don't know if you remember, it was a terrible, terrible blizzard on Shabbos. And but we had very good farbrengen, very, very good farbrengens. And I was very taken by your stories. And I have been ever since then. So I'm very, very grateful that you're agreeing to do this. I know that this is not your comfort zone. This is not your forte, to talk live and to schmooze with stories like this in front of an audience. But so for the purposes of that, we're going to pretend like there is no audience now. It's just going to be you and me. And I want to make a comment before we start on the picture behind
I find it fun. I find it a little hard to hear you. Or if my computer's low or whatever.
Okay, you hear me better now?
No, I hear you clear. It's just low. Maybe it's just my computer. I don't know.
Okay. So I want to comment on the pictures that are behind you.
Oh.
Because the video flips the pictures. So it looks like the Tzemach Tzedek has his jacket left over right.
That is correct. It is.
Oh, it is? Oh, so it's not flipped.
No, it is correct.
In the original, it's left over right?
This is the original picture. What happened was, and at the back of this, if you have a moment, I'll take it down and I'll show you.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of, I bought this in Kahos. They were selling this poster.
Yeah.
Behind this, there's a whole bunch of pictures. And this is the original picture. Which one is it? This one is the original one, which was printed in all the Sfarim.
Right.
And however, it says about, which one is it? Okay. The one of them, the Friedrich Rebbe says, here. This one, the Friedrich Rebbe says it's most masim. Now, the interesting thing about the word masim, to my mind, anyway, my pshat, is not that see, that's the one you're used to.
Right. That's the old one.
Now, the one that's most masim doesn't mean it's the most truthful, to my mind. It just means that it's fitting because according to the Rebbe's and Rivka's memory of the Tzemach Tzedek, you're seeing an older person who's more frail. Now, seemingly, according this was Rabbi Kaplan printed the whole thing in the Chabad, that there was seemingly the original picture which was taken, which they say the story that they say what happened was that the goy who painted the picture, he walked into the Tzemach Tzedek's room while he was saying Chassidus. It was on Shabbos, which is why he's wearing white clothes. It was on Shabbos, and he looked at the Tzemach Tzedek, he closed his eyes, he went into the street, and they say he actually bumped into a tree on the way, but he did not open his eyes until he got home and he started to sketch onto the paper. It seems to be very exact, the details on the picture, with none of the other pictures which we're used to have that exact, all the details like that.
Right.
They say that it's a Tzemach Tzedek, when he heard or when he saw the picture, some point he said, "Oi, Shabbos," because the guy took the picture on Shabbos. However, When he saw the picture, he was like a little calmer because he said, it's not real. Was not real. Number one, he made the clothes left over right, the way the goyim do. So he didn't, so it's not real, number one. Number two, he said, I think it was the sefer is upside down.
And the sefer is on his lap.
And that, I don't know if it's wrong. But the sefer is upside down. Because even though he tried to get, obviously, the details of the face correct,
right?
But nevertheless, the sefer is wrong and the clothing is wrong. However, I noticed something on this painting, very, very interesting. Even though the top is left over right, if you look at the bottom,
it's right over left. I noticed that.
Which is strange, because, if you're doing a cloth, it should be continuous. So maybe that part he did get right. It's very strange.
I was in Cheder in like 5th grade, and I took off my glasses to rub my eyes or whatever, and I put it down on my chumash. So my teacher said this whole thing about this painting, and he said that Chassidim point out 3 things that don't seem accurate about the painting. That it's left over right, that his jacket is left over right, and Chassidim always do jackets right over left, that his sefer is on his lap, and he wouldn't put a sefer on his lap, and that his glasses are on his sefer, and he would never put his glasses on his sefer. That's what I remember from when I was a little kid. Maybe it's not accurate, but those 3 are for sure true. It's true, maybe not about the
I was wondering why you said sefer on the lap, because I never heard that. So, but you it's Gersa the Yankas.
It's Gersa the Yankas, and also it's like Tzich and Seichel. I mean that you don't put a holy sefer on your legs, on your lap.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But that's what I heard, and it became part of my life. Everybody in shul already knows you can't put your glasses on the siddur. It's not nice.
Yeah, glasses on the siddur are steich, but I'm saying to put your sefer on your lap. Please. I'm trying to remember if I saw the Rebbe in such a position, but I probably didn't, because I never saw the Rebbe holding a sefer without a table or a stender in front of him. So it probably wouldn't be.
It would be an interesting thing to ask those who were there. Shabbos Parshas Nosai Tafshin Nun Aleph. What the Rebbe did with his siddur when he got up onto the stage, because there was no stender, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you something I did notice one time the Rebbe did with his siddur, which was very, very interesting. I think there's a video of it also. The banister, which goes down from the Rebbe's bima. So the Rebbe actually stood his siddur, but he wasn't standing on there while he did it, if I remember correctly. But the Rebbe was down. One of the first times the Rebbe was giving dimes to it was after a rally for children. So the Rebbe was giving packets of dimes to the Madrichim. So the Rebbe took his siddur and he stood it upwards, leaned it against the banister, which to my mind, I was thinking to myself, it's the floor that the Rebbe davens on. The Rebbe stands there during davening, during Tishrei at least in those years. Right. And here there was leaning the siddur. Rebbe, I mean, the Rebbe wasn't on there at that point. So interesting, I saw the Rebbe put it there. But I think I did hear from people who were there that the Rebbe did, when you're talking about Nasa and Nun Aleph, the Rebbe did put the siddur, no, he put it down. He didn't hold it the whole time. Maybe there was a table there.
I guess eventually they brought a table, but
there was something there.
2 minutes for sure. The Rebbe just dragged his chair to the front of the bima, from what I heard anyway.
Yeah, there's something I read. A lot of pratim. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you.
Right. Okay, so that was the Hakdama. Now let's go from the beginning. So yeah. So you were born in England?
I was born in England, born in Manchester.
Manchester.
The Vogel family basically comes from Manchester.
So you grew up with my brother-in-law, with Moshe Meir together?
No. Well, my parents moved to London when I was about 2.5, so I don't remember. I don't remember Manchester as such.
Okay.
I visited sometimes.
So what is your first memory of the Rebbe? Not seeing the Rebbe in England, I mean, hookups or Well, what's your first memory of the day?
Before that, probably. I'll tell you why, because I always learned in Lubavitcher school. So I imagined that the Rebbe was part of our vocabulary. So I can't say where exactly I heard of the Rebbe first, because I was always hearing of the Rebbe. I remember even my house, we always had a picture, a painting actually from Tiefenbrunn,
Right.
of the Rebbe wearing Talis film. Famous painting. I don't know if it's still around, but it's a beautiful painting. I remember one time Tiefenbrunn coming inside our house. So he looks at the painting and he says, you know, I look at that painting, it's hard for me to imagine that I actually painted that painting. It was interesting. So that was the first painting. I guess we always grew up with, the Rebbe was, in a certain sense, part of our life. Even though, my father didn't learn the Lubavitcher Yeshiva, so our entry to Chabad was gradual. But Chabad, the Rebbe was always, I can't remember hearing about the Rebbe for the first time. So it must have been something, I grew up with.
Right.
But I remember one of my teachers telling us when the first hookups came in England, we called them broadcasts. We didn't call them hookups. We called them broadcasts, which is the exact translation of the word shidur.
Right. To broadcast.
In Israel, they say shidur. Shidur actually means a broadcast. So we used to have a broadcast. It was start at 2:30 in the morning, which was a lot earlier. But even at Yisroel, it's easier. It's 4:30. There was 2:30. So I remember my teacher, maybe it was Rabbi Rappaport, who's now in Mequon near Milwaukee. So I remember him telling us, they made a new thing, and now you can hear the Rebbe through the telephone. And of course, not just one person. He's explaining, we're young boys. So he says, not for one person, that wouldn't be fair. You connect the telephone to a loudspeaker, and everybody can hear the Rebbe talking. He's telling us this new thing, they're able to hear the Rebbe talking. That's one of the first things I remember. So obviously, the Rebbe was always part of our life. I remember the first time I heard the Rebbe's voice.
Yeah.
And it wasn't live then. It was actually two great things happened to me on that same day. I was probably 11 years old or something like that. And I had to help someone. He had to move a Sefer Torah. So he moved the Sefer Torah. It was the first time in my life I held a Sefer Torah. And I went out of the Lubavitch Shul after that, after I finished helping someone. He told me to sit down. I held the Sefer Torah. And then I went outside and I see Mr. Tiefenbrunn in his car and wherever it was. So he said he had a tape recorder next to him. I said, then you have the Rebbe. So he put on a tape of the Rebbe. It was the first time I heard the Rebbe's voice in my life. So for me, it was like, what a day. And the same day I held a Sefer Torah and I heard the Rebbe's voice.
That's very cool. How old were you?
I'm trying to remember. I probably was 10 or 11. I don't remember exactly how old I was. It was hookup started at Tashin Lamed. How old was it? Tashin Lamed. I was 9. It must have been a little later.
I was talking to Moshe Meir. Moshe Meir has a friend in Eretz Yisrael, Glitzenstein.
Lichtenstein. He was in charge of the hookups.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So I was talking to him. I said, how funny is it? We say, Es hakoil asa Hashem, what's the expression? Yafa be'itai. Hashem made everything in the right time. But there's a very big question mark on the whole internet and the whole, like the Zoom that we're doing here and the WhatsApp. Could you imagine the ease with which you could have broadcast the Rebbe's Farbrengens and the Rebbe could have heard everybody, the other way also, like they tried to do that one time, that people should say L'chaim to the Rebbe from Eretz Yisrael. The ease of it. And now it's very nice. You and me can talk. It's very nice. But come on. Where were you 30, 40, 50 years ago?
That's right.
But on the other hand, imagine everybody at the Farbrengens with their phones, Every time the Rebbe is the Nigga is very strong. Everybody's whipping out their phones to catch it so they can whip it around their WhatsApp groups. I don't know if the trade-off would have been good.
Yeah. Well, the sichas from the Rebbe about not recording him. Seemingly it was a very sharp sicha. I think it was at least Tammuz, Tashin Chav Ches or Tashin Chav Tes. And the Rebbe spoke about people who were recording and destroying the shul's property. I think they used to splice into the wires and they used to make their own recordings. Everyone wanted one recording better than the other. So the Rebbe spoke very sharply. There's two people who had permission to record. Just, I think it was Meir Harlik was one of them. And the other one was, I think, Zebel Katz. And later he gave over his permission to Zalman Chanim, I think. There's two people out there.
I saw it. I saw that Sikha in the Dvar Malchus. It was a few weeks ago in the Dvar Malchus, that Farbrengen. The Rebbe said, if you'll take my advice, what there was a tikkun, the Rebbe gave them a tikkun. You remember what the Rebbe said? I just saw it. So he said, if you take my advice, you'll learn the whole Igeres HaTshuva by heart, and 100 Blad Gemara by Palpeh.
To everybody? The Rebbe said that?
No, to the people that did it.
No, I heard the story. Sorry. No, finish.
In fact, I asked on the Shluchim exchange, on the Shluchim email exchange, which is the biggest, with the biggest conversation that I have access to. I said, does anybody know if someone actually did this? Was there actually a Lubavitcher that went and chazed the whole Geras HaTshuva and 100 Blat Gemara Balpeh because he spliced, because the Rebbe said at the Farbrengen that if you listen to my voice, you'll do this? I didn't get any response.
I heard the story from Rabbi Nachum Yosef Twersky. You know, he's the Lubavitcher Twersky in Crown Heights.
Yes.
And he said a story like this, that it was a bacher who came from different yeshiva. He joined some 70. And he was used to, in his yeshiva, you record the Rosh Yeshiva. So he recorded the Rebbe's Farbrengen. After the Farbrengen, the Rebbe told, somebody told him, you know, the Rebbe doesn't want you to record. So he felt very bad. So he wrote to the Rebbe, asked the Rebbe for a tikkun. So I heard just 100 Blat Gemara. I didn't hear the Geras HaTshuva part. But maybe it's a different story. I don't know. But this is what he said, Rabbi Twersky. So he chazed 100 Blat Gemara.
Yeah.
And he went to Rabbi Mentlik and he got verheerd. Mentlik verheerd him. He knew well. So he did his tikkun. The hemshech to that, he says, was very interesting. Beryl Levin from the library, he heard, this is where Rabbi Twersky tells a story, whatever. And he says, the Rebbe so much appreciates somebody learning Gemara Balpeh. So he said, let me also do it. So he went and he learned the whole Baba Basra by heart.
About 11.
Learned the whole Baba Basra by heart. Every month, the Hamhala would go into the Rebbe to give a report around Rosh Chodesh. So the next Rosh Chodesh, so he went over to Rabbi Mentlik and he got verheerd. The next Rosh Chodesh, when they went in, so Rabbi Mentlik reported to the Rebbe that he was that Bar Levin was verheerd in the whole Baba Basra. He says the Rebbe leaned back and with his hand he pushed his hat backwards. Ganz from the Basra. See the Rebbe's pleasure. He knew learned the whole Baba Basra by heart. That's behemshach to this story. See, Tefeach Amanas Latfiach. Peira is a Peira. It was very interesting.
That is beautiful. So
yes, that's what I heard from that. Anyway, so getting back to the recordings of the Rebbe, so it was I begged my father a few times to take me to the Rokups, but my father was like, I see no reason to take a little boy in the middle of the night. I've seen the other kids, they all run around. There's no point. I begged him. A few times I begged him. Till finally it was Yud Shvat, it was Tashalam and Gimel. I said, you told me the next time you're going to take me now. Then I had a shtickle cold, whatever, and my Zayda over Shalom was in the house then, my father's father, and he was, no way, can't go in the middle of the night, you're not well, Shumay finished. Shine. I couldn't get against two of them, my father and my Zayda. So I was forbidden for going to that Farbrengen. So I said, when's the next time? So I promise you next time he'll take me. So the next time opportunity was in Alf Nissen. Purim, for some reason, wasn't the opportunity. Whatever. Maybe I didn't even know there was a Farbrengen then. But Yudalf Nissen, father took me, even though he was exhausted. He had a grocery store, and he didn't sleep a whole night. But he took me to the hookup. It was the first time I heard the Rebbe live. Yudalf Nissen to Shalom Gimel. And the Rebbe said in a sudden mimer, some reason the Rebbe didn't say to sing the mimer again. So he finished the Sikha, and then Mamash went straight into the mimer. Maybe a few seconds pause, but went straight into the mimer after the Sikha. So suddenly everybody's like, everybody jumps up. So the Rebbe started the mimer. And that's the first time I remember a hookup.
It was Hillel Paritcher tried to see the Alter Rebbe, right? A bunch of times. And kept getting
he once heard his voice. Then.
Heard his voice, right? There you go, same story. Heard his voice on a tape recorder in somebody's car, but kept on missing the live broadcast. But Hillel Paritcher ended up seeing the Alter Rebbe, yeah?
He never saw the Alter Rebbe. No.
Oh, he never ended up.
He hid under a bed. No, he hid under the bed.
Oh, so your stories are not exactly identical.
No, it would be very unusual to find someone in those years who heard the Rebbe speaking but didn't see him.
Right.
How many people do you have like that?
Right.
It's not really. So he came just a little bit. Anyway, so this house is Lamed Gimel. So I was already how old was I? Almost 12. It was the first time I heard the Rebbe speaking. It was hard to me actually to understand. I knew Yiddish well, and I had our teacher. His name was also Rabbi Levin. It's a long yarn, but Rabbi Levin, from the famous Levin family. His uncle was Yisroel Neveler, so he was my melamed for 3 years. Like a shmaka person, how much amazing.
I think Fivish said that he taught him too. Yeah. Not possible.
Yeah. Actually, my shver says he taught him too in Paris. My shver, Rabbi Gurkov, came out of Russia. So when they finally got to Al-Manuchel, Al-Anachel, or whatever you call it, so he got to Paris, to Brumois, and there Bar Levin taught him.
So tell us about Bar Levin a little bit.
What? Mainly I remember just the Gemara. He taught us. Because before Shnasa Shivim, actually, it was just Ashlam base. Before Shnasa Shivim, so Lakovich Nasa Shivim, everyone's doing something in the number of 70. So he counted all the blot of Gemara which we had learned until that time. And he said, we have not 70 blot, but 70 amudim. So we chazered 70 amudim, Lakovit, the Rebbe's 70th birthday. And then he sent in a duch to the Rebbe. And later, before Pesach, after Pesach, I'm not sure, we heard that the Rebbe is sending out to everyone who joined in the Mivtza, the Rebbe is sending a Tanya with a letter. So at that time, I thought it was a personalized letter. So in my childish mind, I thought, the Rebbe is going to send me a letter. Who knows what he's going to write inside there about how I behave. So I tried to behave good during that time. Later, I found out it was a Michtav Klali Prati, but that didn't hurt. So our class actually got a Tanya, and the class just under us, each one got a Siddur. So the Rebbe gave out to a lot of meisters. The Rebbe gave out to Tanyas or Siddur. Each one had the letter in the back. The letter with the Tanya said you should behave according to what it said, written Perikam Nemalaf and Tanya. Now it's a famous pasuk. Everybody knows one of the 12 psukim. V'hini Hashem nitzav alav. You always remember the Ibn standing over you, watching what you're doing. The letter with the Siddur said, Targo Atzmachal Hizbainu, you should get used to thinking in what it says in the Siddur before Maida Ani, that even when you lie in your bed, you remember the Ibn is on top of you, watching you what you're doing. Those are the two letters. Those are the differences. Besides that, the letters are almost identical.
The message is identical. Hashem nitzav alav.
Yeah, message is identical. The thing also Ad shebetzedek to chaloimar kemoifis ayisi l'Rabbi matam achziyais. Be able to say that you're a moifis, you're an example for everybody else. That was the gist of the letter. Anyway, Rabbi Levin, he gives a lot of Chassidish maises. One mice I remember sticks out in my mind because I never saw it printed anywhere else. Yeah, other stories he told us were printed. I was a bookworm, so I knew a lot of the stories that he told us. But one story sticks out in my mind. He says he had an uncle. I imagine he's talking about Yisroel Neveler. He never told us the name, I don't think if he would have told us that, I don't think it would have made any difference to us. I wouldn't have known who he meant anyway. But I imagine that he probably meant Yisroel. He said he would tell us stories about Misnagdim, and we would laugh. He said he would mamish make us roll on the floor, mamish laughing. Anyway, the one story he says, so the Rebbe Rashab, during the Farbrengen, would take his shtreimel and would put it onto the windowsill. So during the summer, the window was open. Actually, the Rebbe Rashab didn't Farbrengen that often. Anyway. Farbrengen 3 times a year. Maybe it wasn't even the summer. And so the window was open. So as kids, my computers tell me that there's something wrong with my connection. So tell me if you have a problem. I can't hear you.
It's a little crackly, but I can hear you.
Oh, maybe I should go into my phone.
No, it's good. It's good. We're good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If you have a problem, then tell me. Okay. Anyway, so he said that Rebbe Rashab would put his shtreimel near on the windowsill. It's written in different places. Rebbe Rashab would only put in his shtreimel for the mimer. It's for brain without the hat. So he put on the shtreimel, put shtreimel by the windowsill, and the kids would love to go from the other side by the window and smell the shtreimel. It had a heavenly smell. So they said. They didn't want the Rebbe to notice them, But he said the kids would love to do that. That was that's one story that sticks out in my mind, which Rabbi Levin told us. Very interesting person. He was a chazan also, but I never heard him daven for Lamed. One time in Kippur, where he had a bad cold. Besides, I could hear the hartzak, but the voice wasn't there. He actually admitted he killed his voice by smoking.
Yeah. I think that for whatever reason, when I mute myself, it causes your sound to be crackly. I don't understand why, but that's what it looks like. So for some reason, it's a problem on my end.
I don't have such a good. The computer is not the best,
but it's working. It's doing.
If you want, I can transfer it to my phone if you want. Maybe it'll.
We'll see. If it gets worse, I'll let you know.
Okay.
So when is the first time you actually came to 770?
Oh. So I came to 770 Toshan Lamed Vav, Sukkot. We came for Sukkot, and actually I once printed in the forerunner of the Deher, Lemid the Rebbe. I printed there first 24 hours. My first 24 hours by the Rebbe. Anyway, so day after in Kippur, we flew from London. As soon as I got there, somebody picked us up, and he said the Rebbe went to the Oyel, so he already went home, so you're not going to see the Rebbe today. At that time, the Rebbe started adding days which he went to the Oyel. I'm not sure if the Rebbe used to go to the Oyel before that, day after in Kippur. I know for sure that the Rebbe added Isru Chag Simchas Torah to go to the Oyel, and probably from then on, the Rebbe always started to go some Isru Chag. The Rebbe started to go to the Oyel. The reason why it was Negeya was because of Yechidus. And we had our flight the day after Isru Chag, so we thought, Isru Chag we'll go to Yechidus. Here the Rebbe said on Chalmei, the Rebbe was already Mediyah, he's going to the Oyel the day after Sukkot, the day after Simchas Torah. So I remember we were standing on line for Lulav convention. There was Lulav who was standing in line together with Rabbi Chodakov was standing in line. He wouldn't let anyone let him go in front of him. My father said, Rabbi Chodakov, you go in front of me.
Really?
He was so exact about that. Wherever he was on the line, that was it. And my father asked him about the Chiddush. The Rebbe was going to the Oyel, that's it. Nothing to do. So I didn't have Yechidus then. I'm going to the end of the trip. But
well, there was no Yechidus. There was no Yechidus for you.
So I didn't have Yechidus. We couldn't change our flight. It was impossible. We would have had to buy a completely new ticket and talking about loads of money. It wasn't shaykh. So actually, some people told my father, why don't you stand next to the Rebbe's door? That time wasn't done that often. Stand next to the Rebbe's door the Rebbe say for example, hate, you never know. The Rebbe might go inside. Seemingly it had happened once or twice. They were inside his room and gave somebody stocker for shlichus mitzvah. So the Rebbe, so he said, why don't you go stand there? We stood there. Us together with Stanley Kim, say Betzalel Kim. I can say his English name. So we stood there. As there was the Rebbe didn't actually mincha downstairs, but we stood upstairs near the Rebbe's door. And as the Rebbe came up from the hallway, before in those years, the Rebbe didn't used to use the elevator. The Rebbe always used to walk, probably till Lamed Ches, I'm not sure. But in those years, the Rebbe used to walk up the stairs. And as the Rebbe came up, turned to the hall, so I saw a little groaner whispering something to the Rebbe. I suspect that he told the Rebbe that we did not have yechidus. So the Rebbe comes over. I remember the Rebbe standing right in front of me. My father's here. And the Tzal Kin was either this side or that side. I can't remember. Anyway, so, and immediately the Bachrim jumped up in the Zal. They started climbing up on benches and tables. I don't know what they expected. They immediately started climbing up. So I guess it was unusual at that time. People standing for a bracha for Gesundheit. So the Rebbe stood right in front of me, in front of us, I should say. Soll forum beschateven Hatzlachas, soll sein Hatzlache Jahr, soll sein Hatzlache Jahr und Ateire Jahr. The father told me right after that, as the Rebbe said Hatzlache Jahr, he looked him in the eyes. So I don't know when he looked him in the eyes, but I can tell you he looked me in the eyes when he said Ateire Jahr. So that. And then my father says to me, listen, even if you're in Yechidus, probably the bracha wouldn't have been much longer. He tried to comfort me the fact that I wasn't in Yechidus. But because of that, I was able to go the next year again for Tishrei. That time I went myself. This time I did have Yechidus in Tashel Lamed Zayin. And I just want to tell you one experience, Tashel Lamed Vav, because it was very, very, I don't know what word to use, but a very, very strong experience.
Yeah.
That is when I'm saying Goimel the first time in my life. Now, actually, it was interesting because the night after we arrived, so we flew Yud Aleph, it was Yud Beis. Wednesday, Yud Beis Tishrei. And that night was Yechidus. It was the last time that there was Yechidus between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. My father actually told, went up to Yom Klein, I said, could we go to Yechidus? So he said, well, you just came and you already want to go into Yechidus? I didn't know it at that time, but seemingly there's an Inyan by Chassidim. The first you have to be by Fabrengen. First you hear a Maimer, and then you go into Yechidus. Anyway, so that night there was Yechidus. So they said Ma'ariv is going to, so first of all, I saw the Rebbe the first time by Mincha. Don't forget, in those years, the Rebbe didn't used to come out to Shachris. So the Rebbe would come out only to Kriyas HaTorah on Thursday, on Mondays and Thursdays. And the Rebbe would come out to Mincha every day, Mincha Ma'ariv. So the Rebbe came out to Mincha on Wednesday, Yud Beis Tishrei. And I just remember the Rebbe's face as he came out. As I came into the shul, was downstairs. My friends told me, if it's Levi Sudak Rebbe, my friend, stand in front. The Rebbe's been worried about you a whole night. He wants to see your face. I couldn't understand why the Rebbe should be worried about me, but whatever. So I stood in the front. I was seeing the Rebbe's face look different than all the pictures ever. By the way, till that time, I'd never seen a film, a video of the Rebbe. I'd seen pictures, but not the film. So I hadn't seen the Rebbe moving. In those years, it wasn't that common to have a video. And nowadays, all the machines. Those years, you need to have a projector. It wasn't that simple to see a video of the Rebbe. And I had never seen one. When I see the Rebbe coming in, he looked different than all the pictures. And his face was, to me, sort of yellowish. I don't know, it was like very interesting. I never saw the Rebbe looking like that, not before, not after. And the Rebbe came in, the Rebbe went to his place, puts on his gartel in the middle of Ashrei. As the Olam saying Ashrei, they're putting his gartel. And they're davened, and I'm thinking, I'm davening by the Rebbe the first time. Say each word of Shemoneh Esrei carefully. So I'm still in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, and the Chazan's already standing. What's this? I'm going to daven slower than the Rebbe. Never happened again. Anyway, after Mincha, the Rebbe walks over to the Aron Kodesh to touch the Pareiches. And then as he turns around, the Rebbe breaks out into a beautiful smile. He smiled to Frieden, the photographer. That was his first history there. They gave him such a beautiful smile. And then the Rebbe walks into the middle of the shul, and suddenly I see everybody jumping. The Rebbe stopped by somebody, a bacher, and he told him something. Everybody jumped. Of course, by the time they got there, the Rebbe was already out of the shul. But I heard them repeating what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe asked this bacher who was taking pictures if he knows or how much Tanya he knows by heart. 8 years later, the Rebbe spoke about it. Chav Cheshvan Tafshin Memdal. The Rebbe speaks about it. Bacher, Mincha Zeit. I asked him, do you know Tanya? He says, what's the so tell me Tanya? Tanya is something you can learn by Yom, can learn by Laila. B'shah she'ein elayim v'loy Laila. Photography is a dover chashuv. Tanya. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe was then talking about not taking pictures of him. So it was like very strong sicha. Anyway, so this is what happened then. I don't have to say his name in public, doesn't matter. But anyway, that was my first mincha. And in Ma'ariv, they said because there's Yechidus, the Rebbe was going to come out in the middle of Yechidus to Ma'ariv. My father said, you're not staying up. Ma'ariv will probably be 11:45. Okay. So next morning, I want to bench Goimel, the Rebbe's minyan. I heard the Bachram talking, and they said, because the Rebbe had Yechidus the night before, usually after Yechidus, the Rebbe would come to 7:70 at 1 o'clock. But since the Rebbe is going to go to the Oil, because he did Gimel Tishrei, so Mistama, the Rebbe will come at 12 o'clock. In Kachava, they were right. So the Rebbe's minyan, so to speak, the yeshiva minyan, starts 9:30. 10 o'clock, the Rebbe is supposed to come into Kriyas Torah officially. So the minyan waited, you could say, to me it looked like out of Derech Eretz. The minyan waited for half a minute or whatever. The Rebbe's not there, so they laned. So one of my friends, Yossi Tifman, he says to me, come, let's go outside. When the Rebbe comes, they'll make a minyan for the Rebbe. So let's be part of that minyan. So we went outside. We didn't hear Chris there. I went somewhere after davening, went to eat, came back. And 12 o'clock, the Rebbe came to 70. In the beginning, Leibel Gron was making Kriyas Torah and Ganit Natachton right next to the Rebbe's room, as they used to do in those times, because not to disturb and say that, I imagine. I didn't hear him saying that, but he realized there's too many people in there. So in the end, he said, okay, we'll say, we'll have Kriyas Torah in the Zal, in the little shul upstairs. The Rebbe came for Kriyas Torah. So one of my cousins, married to my cousin, Naftali Cohen, but he couldn't get it. He couldn't get the Aliyah Kohen because there was some baby, whatever. So they didn't send him out of the shul. They just said, Yamoid Bimkan Kohen. That was it. That was how they did it. So they gave this guy a Aliyah, and the Rebbe had Shlishi. So after the Rebbe's Aliyah, so Naftali Cohen went over to see Gaimel, and I went just behind him. This is the first time in my life I'm seeing Gaimel. And I'm standing, 2 feet away from the Rebbe. The Rebbe's at the side of the Bina. And I'm standing here. And I feel eyes on me. If you've seen all the pictures, the Rebbe looks very strongly at anyone who says Gaimel. The Rebbe seems to look very, very strongly at them. And I feel eyes on me. So I picked up my eyes. Such a dread, such a fear. I felt my stomach turn from such a dread. The word Shekhamalani is a long word when the Rebbe's looking at you like that. I must have repeated it, I don't know, 5, 6 times. I don't know, the word wouldn't come out. And for some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off. I was supposed to look back in the siddur and continue the bracha. I just couldn't. In the end, the Rebbe lowered his eyes. And I looked back and said, the siddur, Shegmalani Toiv. And I stepped back. And then I realized the pshat in the Rashi, which it says, Ar kevoisai dor ledor nakshin. The knees are knocking together. It says by Daniel that he saw Machzel Akim, kevoisai dor ledor nakshin, his knees were knocking together. And that's when I realized what that means. My knees were pashat knocking together from fear. And then Naftali Korn got the Hagba, small sifter, he picks it up, shows it to the Rebbe, and walks back with it open.
Sit down with it open?
He wanted to. He, used to. He also didn't grow up in Lubavitch circles. From the Rebbe, the first time he's doing it, whatever it is. So he shows the Rebbe, and he starts walking back with the sifter open. And the Rebbe goes like this as his finger. Put it back on the bima. So I just think the Rebbe did that. That was an experience. It was interesting. Anyway.
The Vayisor Bagoyim.
I can't hear you.
Zayde Yechanan gave his son Hagba, and he sat down with him. Yechanan Gordon gave his son Hagba. His son was a rabbi. My Zayde was a rabbi in an Orthodox shul, so he was used to sitting down with the Sefer Torah. So he sat down with the Sefer Torah. So the Gabbai, his father, says to the Rebbe, "Vayisarvu bagoyim vayilmedu maseyam." And the Rebbe gave a big smile. Yeah.
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 I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what else to tell you about? Going to the first visit, I mean, it's Baruch Hashem, it's a wealth, day after day. I should have made some write it all down. I'm hoping to get there one day. But,
so you had a good place for Hakafis?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. It was
the idea of making a bracha on the Rebbe's lulav existed always? It was something that always was?
Not by previous Rabbi.
No. I mean by the Rebbe.
I would say.
Or did it start in the later years or something?
Oh, by there? No, I think it started from very early, very, very early.
So that year you did
maybe even the first year. I'm not sure, but the what? Yeah.
So you made the bracha that year.
Yeah. So 6 days. Yeah. From the 7th day, from the 2nd day of Sukkot. First day was Shabbos, so 2nd day of Sukkot. Yeah.
So what do you remember from Hakafis?
Whole Sukkot. There's a letter from the Rebbe, an answer.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Hakafis. I remember also, but that was.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. What did you say about the letter?
As a Hakdama to Hakafis, at that time. No, there was a letter. They wrote to the Rebbe. There's such a lot of rain. How do you have a Simchas Yom Tov? You can't even sit inside the sukkah. So the Rebbe said a very strange letter. But because you anyway have made the bracha, made the bracha today, therefore it's a siman that the hisvados should be with Yishuv Hadas in the house. So therefore hisvados would be more Yishuv Hadas. That's what the Rebbe said in the letter. It's a very. I remember the Bachram Kochen Zichron and what Pshat. Till today, people are not sure exactly what the Rebbe meant. That's what the Rebbe wrote. From the second night of Sukkot, it's not important. But I remember the second night of Sukkot. Every night, every time the Rebbe would come into davening, we'd sing a niggin. Sukkot used to be a very peaceful Yom Tov then, before there was dancing in the streets. There wasn't much Mivtzayim to do. There was no Mivtzat film, Okay, it was Mivtzat Lulav, but it was a peaceful Yom Tov. Tashim Amalaf, the Rebbe changed everything, started having a dance in the streets, and then Simchas Sheva took over. Then the second night of Sukkot used to be Simchas Sheva of Habrangans all over Crown Heights. The place I stayed by Rebel Dubrovsky. He's a brother-in-law of my uncle Feivish. Their wives are sisters, so that was the closest relative we had. So I stayed with him a number of times. So the second night of Sukkot, Mendel Futafas would come to Fabring in that Sukkah. He's also a relative because his wife was Mrs. Dabrowski's mother's sister. And her mother, his brother Dabrowski Schwiger, lived in the house also. She lost a husband, I don't know where. He got lost somewhere. So she lived in the house. Anyway, so Mendel used to Fabring. So I'm saying that there was Fabringens all over. Going back to what I want to say, so the second night of Sukkot, they're always singing a niggin when they ever came in. Generally singing, yeah. That was a general niggin. This time, second night of Sukkot, they sing Allah Selah. Allah Selah. The Rebbe comes in, puts a siddur down on the stender, turns around, and he started to clap. Mamish, it was like unbelievable. And somebody says to me, Mamish like Hakofis. And I was like, it was unbelievable to see the Rebbe turn around and clap like that. It was unusual. And at Hakofis, he tried to catch a place for Hakofis. I went up there, some friend, one or two friends, and we chose later we were told, one of the most dangerous places in the 770, between the Russian and the French bleacher. It was like, no, the Russians, they were very good, the Russians. I mean, very kind. And the Rebbe comes into Ma'ariv for Shmini Atzeres, comes to this place quiet. Later years didn't happen anymore, other than singing. But till a certain year, I don't know what year, it was quiet, and the Rebbe himself would begin a niggin before Ma'ariv and Shmini Atzeres. So the Rebbe comes in, puts down the siddur, turns around, and by the way, there's one recording on the Gunei Svados, the Rebbe singing that niggin, and the way the crowd roars in, joins together, that mamash reminds me of that scene. The way the Rebbe starts the niggin, and the whole crowd, it was a roar together. They all start singing. There's our Ma'ariv, then they announce Hakofis will begin at 9:30. Till Lamed Ches is 9:30. After Lamed Ches started at 9 o'clock. Right, there we came to Hakofis. Here the Rebbe saying Atar Reisa. It was, everything is an experience. It's hard to remember everything.
Well, one second. I want to stop you for a second. So this year, after Simchas Torah, there was something going around WhatsApp that an Israeli had recorded. You heard it? An Israeli had a tape recorder at Hakofis. So therefore, I was able to hear for the first time in my life what they say is the Rebbe saying Ato Haresa, right? And from the sound of it, the Rebbe is shouting so loud. It's unbelievable to think about it. I mean, so loud on top of his lungs, if you could say such a thing, and such a high on such a high note. It's like, is that what it was like?
I would say, and don't forget the shul is packed. 3/4 of the shul will be able to hear the Rebbe saying Atar Reisa, at least. If it was very quiet, maybe all the way to the back. I don't know. But this particular recording that you're talking about, this is from Tafshin Mem, they have a drop of Atar Reisa. Atar Reisa is the first pasuk is lower. By the time it came to the end, it was V'hoya Zaracha, the Rebbe screaming.
That's what it is, V'hoya Zaracha, right?
Yeah.
Right. The recording is V'hoya Zaracha. Yeah, screaming.
Yeah.
What does that even look like? What does that look like? The Rebbe is facing the wall, or he's facing the crowd?
Facing the wall, like davening. He's facing Mizrach. The siddur is in front of him. It's like davening. So you couldn't see the Rebbe's face. If you're on the side, you could see a little bit.
So that recording is a recording of the Rebbe's voice as the Rebbe is facing the wall. It means it's really loud. It's even louder than I'm thinking.
Yeah. Personally, the Rebbe would use, I would say, I'll tell you why I think so. the Rebbe would use something to reflect his voice, to bounce his voice off. Facing the wall acts as I would say, a bounce for the Rebbe's voice. But I noticed on Sukkot, the Sukkot Sichas, and even especially in later years, when they started putting a second stender for the Rebbe. In the early years, the Rebbe would stand by his davening stender, put his arm on the stender and would like lean against the wall. So in a sense, the Rebbe's thing, when you stand straighter, your voice, goes easier. Later, they would put a stender. The reason why they put the stender was because of the Sukkot Sichas. The Rebbe should be so much closer to the rest of the crowd. But the Rebbe's bent over a little bit. But I noticed always, the Shabbos Sichas, the Rebbe would have a siddur right under him. Whereas the Chalamoid Sichas, where there's a microphone, the siddur would be at the side. To me, it looked like that he's using the siddur to bounce his voice, because the cover of the stender, it absorbs the voice. It's not going to bounce it. The siddur is flat, so it'll bounce the voice. My personal opinion.
Interesting.
But I noticed the Shabbos Yom Tov Sichas, it was right in front of him, and the Sukkah Sichas was on the side. I noticed that again and again. It's not just one time. Just a personal observation. Here the Rebbe was facing the wall, but the Rebbe would scream. The psukim, he would not scream. Like, and that's already at the end. Imagine each pasuk goes louder and louder. The tev of people, as you're going, you go louder.
But did the Rebbe say all the psukim? The Rebbe said the first and the last.
Once. Simchas Torah night and Simchas Torah day, the Rebbe would say the whole of the first Atar Esa, all 17 psukim. And the other two times, the Rebbe would say just the first and last. Shmini Atzeres night, the Rebbe would say for all 3 times Atar Esa, the Rebbe would say just the first and last. So Simchas Torah night, Simchas Torah day.
So you're saying that the V'haya Zaracha is at the end of the Rebbe saying all the psukim?
No. V'haya Zaracha, in my memory, was after all the 3 times saying Atar Esa, then the Rebbe would say V'haya Zaracha 3 times, one after another. So this guy recorded only one V'haya Zaracha. Maybe there's more, it hasn't come out yet. But
it's unbelievable because you think about how little. I mean, I was at Hakafis when I was young, and it was Shmini Atzeres, and it was Tavshon and Beis. I could barely see anything. It was, I'm very glad that I was there, and I'm eternally grateful for the people that brought me there. But I didn't see Hakafis. I didn't see. And it's amazing how much happened there that is Eine Bedoime, that's incomparable to anything else that happened the rest of the year. Like, for instance, this shouting the psukim. I wonder what else was so unusual that you can't even compare it to anything else throughout the year.
I mean, Simchas Torah itself is a it's a, by the way, I don't know if this is important for what you want to hear now, but for the Deher, well, before the Deher, as I say, the forerunner, Levin with the Rebbe, the guy who's in charge, Jacobs, for which Jacobs was, Mendel Jacobs, I think. He asked me to help him. Whatever I can, I'll help you. And I helped him, what I remember, Shoshana and Kippur, Sukkot, came to Simchas Torah, I said, I can't help you. So you can't describe Simchas Torah. So he says, anyway, he left me alone that year. The next year, he calls me up again. He says, you have to help me. Everyone I talk to does not want to say anything about Simchas Torah. You can't describe it. I said, I'll do whatever I can. But I want to give you 3 introductions. I'm not going to give you all 3. But I'll tell you just, Bekitzer, one introduction is Reb Pinchas Reizes describes the Alter Rebbe's Yechidas HaKafos in Likutei Diburim. You can look it up over there. It's brought down in the Nissim Mendel's Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. You can read there how he describes the Alter Rebbe's Yechidus HaKofis. And another introduction, whatever, I might say with the Pinchas Koretzer, basically the Nakuda is that when you spend Shabbos to the Pinchas Koretzer, you are spending, he is bringing you into his Shabbos. When we were Simchas Torah by the Rebbe, you felt the Rebbe is bringing you into his Simchas Torah. It's indescribable because you saw the Rebbe's bringing you, he's pulling you to where he is, or at least somewhat. The Rebbe's eyes, especially I was talking to some friends about Simchas Torah Tashin Memches, which is the last time I was able to be there. And that was a meyuchadik Simchas Torah more than any other Simchas Torahs. I asked people, one of my wife's uncles, Eli Tenenbaum, and he said he remembers from Tashin Yud Dalet. He said there was never a Simchas Torah like Tashin Memches. So there the Rebbe's eyes were burning. It was like, and again, go describe something. It's a ruchnistic experience. You can't describe it. I want to tell you something which is very funny. There was a book which they printed in Yisroel. It's called Rabbi. Thick book. And in there all kinds of articles, newspaper interviews, whatever. So I just remember one article from that. Pity I never bought the book. I don't have it. But I remember one article in there. This is a newspaper reporter in Ivrit. He says, I understand something. I'm hearing year after year that the Rebbe's HaKofis are indescribable. Now, I am a journalist. My job is to describe things. Now, after hearing so much that you can't describe the Rebbe's HaKofis, I decided I have to go to describe it. So he went. And he says, what should I tell you? It's the first time in my life that I see something that you cannot describe. It's I'm going to try as much as I can. If I describe to you the bleachers of people standing on the sides, the roar of the crowd as they sing, the Rebbe's jumping and clapping, whatever I describe to you does not give you the feeling of being there in HaKofis. And as I tell Bachram nowadays, look at any video you want, the Rebbe clapping and making freilich. You try and get the feeling, even though it's also not the same when you're watching a video of Fabring instead of being there. But that HaKofis was completely different. It was at a different level. I never understood it. In a way, I say, Baruch Hashem, I never saw the Rebbe's HaKofis until I was Bar Mitzvah. A year after, actually, I was 14. So this I was able to appreciate the difference. What was like to dance before, and what was like afterwards. There's no Simchas Torah anywhere in the world. It just doesn't exist. I'll say to anybody, give me 5 minutes of the Rebbe's HaKofis, more than hours of dancing in a different shul. The best dance, when people really get into it, yeah. But they verstehen. These are Masber. So that was, having said that, you begin to start explaining why you can't describe Simchas Torah. Anyway, so there's some anecdotes. It's not funny, but they would be mechaba different people for hakafa. Sometimes there are bonim, something. Shmini Atzeres, Tashlamad Vav. Is mechabed alla Franzese so hakafa. All the Frenchies. I told you I was standing between the Russians and the Frenchies. Baruch Hashem, I was a little closer to the Russians. I blinked. I'm telling you, I blinked. The bleachers were empty on my left side where the Frenchies were. Suddenly it was gone. A moment they were there, the next moment they weren't there. They landed on top of Yitzhak Holzberg, poor guy, they had to schlep him out, they gave him oxygen. Wild people. I see one bacher standing there without a hat, without a jacket, missing a shoe. He bends down and picks up 2 tzitzis from the floor and rolls them up and puts them inside his pocket. I don't know if he was like a pillar with a hat or not, but I definitely saw him pick up 2 tzitzis and put them inside his pocket. It was like, that's some anecdotes. but especially to see the Rebbe dancing, to see the Rebbe, like you say, to hear the hakafas, that as the Rebbe would clap in the whole. I mean, one of the nigunim, which my favorite, the Chakan Rishayim, and it come to one tenua, hey, you have all this, right? So the Rebbe would he must have heard it from everybody who was there.
It's
and
actually on the recording. It's on the recording.
Yeah, it's a little
on the recording.
He's standing next to people who didn't know what the Rebbe was doing because they repeat themselves. But it's missing it in the recording. It doesn't have the. Yeah. It seems like he was standing far away, which shows you how loud the Rebbe's voice was.
Right.
Seems like he's standing very far away. Amazing. Anyway, but the Rebbe would sing, so they would start singing Harkane. So, can you imagine just for a full minute, maybe more, I don't know, it's hard to time it. Just singing until suddenly with one clap and the Rebbe and the whole crowd. It was such a, the way the Rebbe's hands were conducting the niggin the whole time. It was, even later years when they would sing a niggin before the Rebbe came in. This guy's dancing, this guy's jumping, this guy's pushing, And the Rebbe walks in, they make a path for the Rebbe to go in. And the Rebbe goes over to his place. And usually they would sing this song. They sing this song. And as the Rebbe goes over to his place, he puts down the siddur, it turns around. And suddenly the whole 770 is one unison. Everybody's together. Everybody's jumping in unison with the Rebbe's hand clap. It was I loved it. Maybe chitzanistic pieces, but this is one of the highlights. The Rebbe comes in and everything's a few years ago, I didn't want to go to some 70 after Gimel Tammuz for some Chastera. 1 year I didn't have the thing not to go, so I went. And I'm there anyway. But it reminded me, the whole Hakafas reminded me of the time when you wait for the Rebbe to come in. It's it's wait, it's not happening yet. When's the Rebbe come? That's a reminder. Don't noise the dust yet. So I'll say a shame, but it's missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a pizza shop in the Catskills with a friend of mine. And Rabbi Bamzer comes over to us. I didn't know who he is. I didn't know who Rabbi Bamzer is. But he came over, he says, "You guys are Lubavitchers?" We said, "Yeah." He said something that made us say something like, "We're waiting for the Rebbe to come back. We're waiting for Mashiach to come. We want to see the Rebbe again." He said something like that, something in a tone of yearning as opposed to a tone of, freilach. So he said, when Rabbi Akiva's Chaverim saw the wolf, the fox coming out of the Beis HaMikdash, they started crying. And Rabbi Akiva started laughing. And everybody knows what they said, how come you laughed, and how come he explained himself, how it came up. But I have a whole different pshat. Yeah. Rabbi Akiva saw, Yidden was weinen. He saw that there are still Jews who are crying over the Churban Beis HaMikdash, and he started laughing. He said, "You know what? If there are still people who are crying over the Churban, then Mitzvah Hashem is going to be okay. As long as there are people who still realize that we're waiting for the Rebbe to come in." Right. And there's noch nicht da. It's very rich.
That's a geschmack pshat.
It's very rich. But which other Nagunim stood out by Hakafis in your memory?
It's hard to say because the Nagunim were generally, I don't know. There were Nagunim which were kavua, like Chakarne, Alasela, Hachach. Those are the two that I remember were always kavua. And of course the Hakafis Niggun. That was for the Rebbe's Hakafah. But then there was times when the Rebbe would say to sing Niggun. I remember Tafshil Lamed Zayin, And the Rebbe, it was the first time I think the Rebbe said a sicha in the middle of the kofis. And that was a strange, that was very interesting. The Rebbe, there was a whole to-do then in Chevron, Kippur, before Yom Kippur, the Arabs went into the cave of Yaakov Avinu, and they destroyed some things there. I think they ripped up the Leina Tusa for Torah. It was like the Rebbe was very upset what was going on there. In Kippur for Ne'ilah, the Rebbe was crying. And even the march, the Rebbe was the Rebbe called up the children to come onto his bima. Maybe you heard about that. The Rebbe called up the children to come to his bima for Avinu Malkeinu. And after, and during the Kaddish, after Avinu Malkeinu, they say that Rebbe was crying terribly. I couldn't tell from being in the middle of the shul, but we saw something was going on. The Rebbe wanted all the children to come up to him, and then the Rebbe went up into the chair for the march. It was very schwach, very, very schwach. The Rebbe stood and made like this with his hands a few times and went off. So I'd say in a certain sense that Shmini Atzeres, the Rebbe made up for that, if you could say. So the Rebbe started the Sikha. Now, also, I'll tell you a difference, which I remember, Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin. First time I was there, every Hakafa, not the Hakafa that the Rebbe went, but the five in the middle, the Rebbe would step forward from his place to the middle of the davening bina, and he would clap him either the niggin from there. That was Tashan Lamed Vav. Lamed Zayin, the Rebbe had a very bad cold. Very mamish, you could tell the whole time. Vav Tisher in the middle of the Maimer, the Rebbe was sniffing the whole time. It was a very bad cold. And so the Rebbe was leaning on his stender, with his back onto his stender, and the Rebbe was leaning the whole akafis. The Rebbe was clapping very strongly. He was leaning on the stender. Here it comes to Hakafa Dalad or Hakafa Hey, whatever, Melech Elamim. Look at it. Hakafa Dalad or Hakafa Hey. And the Rebbe stepped forward. And the Rebbe looked to Moshe Pinchas Katz. Moshe Pinchas was the Gabe. He was announcing who was supposed to get the Hakafa. So the Rebbe looks towards him. The Rebbe starts saying something. And he became quiet. So now's the time to make Hakafis and Chevron. The Rebbe said that all the Levim should go to the Hakafa to show that Chevron belongs to the Levim, and so singen the Marsha Yadua. And then the Rebbe takes a siddur, and the Rebbe screamed, like you say that V'hoya Zaracha, I would say louder than that. Scream, and here the Rebbe is facing the crowd. Melech Elam Imeshiyana. I can't swear. Scream. Melech Elam. So my name will be in Karenu. By the time he got to our name in Karenu, it was like so loud. I don't know how you say so loud. Then the Rebbe studied the other psukim. The guys wanted to start singing already, and the other shocked because the Rebbe was singing the psukim, the small psukim. And no, the Marsh Yadua. So I sing the march, and the Rebbe started making freilach. And it was interesting, there was one guy there without a beard, quite close to the Rebbe's davening bima, and he kept on going like this to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe was going to him like this. It was very, whatever, but the cloud, there would be very, very freilach in the march. Very freilach. It was one nigger stand up. The next night, Simchas Torah night, again, the Rebbe said a sicha before the Hakafah. Again, the Rebbe said Melech Elamim. Then the Rebbe said that anyone who is in the Israeli army or Miluim or anything like that should go to this Hakafah. And there again, the Rebbe said, Melech Elamim, also very loud. But in my imagination, you can't tell if it's that way or not. The Shmini Atzeres was louder than Simchas Torah, but who knows? I guess because you're used to it already, so you know what you're expecting, sort of. And then they didn't know what song to sing. So the Rebbe says, Ashir Samecha. So he started singing Ashir Samecha. But that was, whatever, it was freilach, but it's a long time ago, so I can't tell you how freilach it was, but Hakafis is Hakafis. It was always...
I have to ask you
Very
about. I have to another thing that we who were not there have a very hard time imagining or visualizing is the Rebbe climbing up onto his chair. It's just a very difficult thing. Not the Rebbe standing on the chair. The Rebbe standing on the chair is another thing. But the Rebbe climbing up onto his chair, I don't understand it. It's not a simple thing to climb onto a chair when you're over the age of 60 or whatever, 70, 80. What is the shot? Somebody was holding the chair?
No.
And also the Rebbe's chair was very squishy. I mean,
Right.
I don't mean to be so technical, but it goes.
I was wondering, talk about that, and they say that was one of the reasons why they built later years. They built the stairs for the Rebbe to stand on. There's a painting going around. You've still seen it.
Yeah.
A painting of the Rebbe standing on the stairs.
Yeah.
Which they built specially for the Napoleon's March. The Takaze, the label was scared. I mean, that was the first time I saw it. And the Rebbe put his hand onto his stender. Like use the stender as a levering point, and just picked himself up. So left foot and his right foot, spin round, and he was like. I think the talus. Most times, I think the talus was covering the Rebbe's face. Most times, I remember. Again, that was a different. Again, the Rebbe was transporting you to different heights. I once showed her in Postal a video of Motzi and Kippur, the Rebbe going out from the shul, Samachta, and the Rebbe was making freilach, and everybody's jumping. And there's a Polish guy, he says, how Motzi and Kippur after the fast is over, and the people are jumping as if. I said, just imagine what they did a few minutes before by Napoleon's March. This is on the way out.
Right.
It's yeah. Everything by the Rebbe was like, he pulled out of you koiches which you never knew you had. Especially Tasha Mem Ches. Can't forget Tasha Mem Ches. I'd like to repeat to you the seventh hakafon, Lil Simchas Torah. Besides one other point, that most of the years that I was there, and Baruch Hashem I was there 10 Simchas Torahs. But most of the years I was there, a hakafa was average 5 minutes. A niggin, be'erich 5 minutes. Simchas Torah Mem Ches, every niggin was 10 to 15 minutes. It was unbelievable. The people were exhausted. I had a place which after, whatever, cheshbainis, you can think now if we made a good cheshbon or bad cheshbon, but the Rebbe used to dance. I saw the Rebbe a few times dancing Rashag. I went to murder the scene, but I've seen it. And Rashag, as the years went on, danced slower and slower. And for shorter, as soon as he would stop, so the Rebbe would stop because he couldn't do it anymore. I remember I heard a story of Rabbi Sudak. He said when he came back after the Yom Kippur War, Toshin Lamadalat, says in Chastera by day, he said the Rebbe tzich vacant. Threw his talus over his face. By daytime, hakafas. The Rebbe was dancing with Rashag. He said it looked like the Rebbe tzich vacant. He was somewhere else. And the Rebbe is dancing and dancing and dancing. And Rashag couldn't. He was trying to stop. And the Rebbe looked like the Rebbe was not here. The Rebbe was just going and going. 2 guys went, he said. Person held Rashag, he failed to go around. And the Rebbe was partially going. But in general, all years, Rashag would stop. A Kenish, and the Rebbe would stop. Mem Ches, the first time I saw, I know it happened in Malach also, Rashag was in the hospital. But besides that, Mem Ches, the Rebbe, Rashak was complaining. The Shmini Atzeres night, the Rebbe. And the Rebbe asked the Baal Yunik, what's he want? Hey, he's cold, whatever. He was very uncomfortable. No, I'm cold, so again, I felt bad for him. As they were taking him out, it was between the first and second Nata Harisa. And they're schlepping him up, and the Rebbe started to go, Freilach. And I felt bad for him. Like Rashag has to go out. Look what you're missing. You took him upstairs. And then the Rebbe started to make freilach every single niggin. It came to the seventh hakafa on the night of Simchas Torah. That year, Izzy Kogan, the tzaddik from Leningrad, he gave the Rebbe the Sefer Torah. And this was the only time ever. I couldn't see from where I was standing. I could see the Rebbe by his place perfectly. I stood closer to the Aron Kodesh. If you're facing the Aron Kodesh, on the left side, the bleach over there. I don't know who was next to me, who was near me, Lippe Brennan, Vogel. And from there, you couldn't see the Rebbe dancing in his hakafa. So by there, I came to the Rebbe's hakafa, and this time we're missing because, okay, the place you got for yourself, that's where you are. And you're watching the Olam. And you see the people on this side, red in the face, screaming with all the koyach. And then suddenly you see these people, and the people on that side, screaming and singing and jumping with all the koyach. And then suddenly you see people on this side are screaming, and that side they're panting. It was like, you could tell which side they was facing just from the crowd. But the Rebbe man let us work on the other 5 hakafas. Every hakafa there was working in. And I'm telling you, the Rebbe's eyes were burning. He was looking at every single person. You could see it. And also there was a chiddush there which I never saw before. People were saying l'chaim in the middle of hakafas. I never saw that. And people realized that I was answering l'chaim, so they started bringing more l'chaim. And everybody from all sides, it's like a farbrengen almost. And there was l'chaim in the middle of the nigunim. There was answering l'chaim also. Strange. But the nigunim, and then after the 7th hakafa, they came back to this place, but the Rebbe held on to the Sefer Torah. He walked up to his davening bima, and that year they put a bima on top of a bima. So the Rebbe was very high. He looked, to me, it looked like the Rebbe was almost going to, that slanty piece in the front and the roof. Now they dropped the ceiling, you can't tell that much. The slanty piece looked almost like the Rebbe was going to, if he jumps too high, he's going to bang his hat inside that. Because the Rebbe was very high. And mamish, they put a bima on top of a bima. So the Rebbe was so high. And the Rebbe went up. He's holding onto the Sefer Torah, small Sefer Torah. And he went like this to all the people on his bima to get down, waiting for them to bend down. It was always full of people. And the Rebbe was waiting for them to bend down. And then the Rebbe started singing Ofaratsta. I had never, ever seen a niggun like that. Mama, she's doing Sefer Torah in all directions. And the Rebbe was jumping. At one point, I saw the Rebbe's shoes off the floor. But I saw him. The Rebbe was jumping backwards and forward. I couldn't believe it. And when the niggun was over, it was a long time. I don't know how long that niggun was. It was a long time that Ofaratsta. Never, ever have I seen Ofaratsta like that. A niggun like that. Then there was Kogan gets up to take the Sefer Torah. And the label's like, go. He saw the Rebbe wasn't ready to give the Sefer Torah yet. And the Rebbe started yet. Also freilich, not as much as the Ofaratsta, but also very, very freilich. And then the Rebbe wants to give the Sefer Torah over to Kogan to put inside the Aron Kodesh. And the Rebbe gave a kiss. It's indescribable. I mean, you don't see the Rebbe kissing. So, okay, you see him kissing his film. Wasn't the same. You saw the Rebbe's love for the Torah. It brought tears to my eyes. See the Rebbe kiss the Sefer Torah like that. Anyway, I spoke to some of my friends afterwards. I've never seen anything like it. Azay got kush to the Sefer Torah. And that was a hakafa. There was Pashat Mamshich, the 7th hakafa, on the davening bin. It was unbelievable. And claim that's one of the good which stands out.
So
Every year
how unusual was it that the Rebbe went up to his bima with the Sefer Torah?
I think it never happened. As far as I understand, that never happened. I've never heard about it anyway. Because always before, when the Rebbe was still on the floor near his bima, closer to the Aron Kodesh, he would give the Sefer Torah back to put inside the Aron Kodesh. I don't think it ever happened before. Not that I know of.
And did you ever see the Rebbe kiss a Sefer Torah like that?
Never.
It was always with the talus.
Yeah. You didn't see the Rebbe kissing. I mean, what stands out to your mind always, the Rebbe goes through a door, he touches the mezuzah.
Doesn't kiss it. But even the Sefer Torah, which the Friedrich Rebbe says in the Likutei Diburim, dafke with 2 hands and dafke with your lips on the Torah, but the Rebbe didn't do it.
No.
And here he did.
And trying to remember what the Rebbe did when he was Chazan and they gave him the Sefer Torah. I don't remember. Definitely wasn't noticeable. And here it was so noticeable.
But you're saying the Rebbe kisses Sefer Torah with his mouth, not with it. Not.
Yeah, that was, yeah. It was just the thing, that kiss itself was a myriad thing, I think. I'm sure I remember it. And anyway, every year has its own stories, I remember it was Tashim Memhei, Tashim Mem Zayin. It was also one of my books stories, but we'll get into that. Take another Yom Mitzvah, but what was it? The Chalal, the Niggin, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now. The Chalal, when they sung that Niggin with those words, the Rebbe would not be ma'id the Niggin. There's one time I remember when the kids came from camp, Chaf Av, and then they sang that Niggin, and then the Rebbe was ma'id very, very strongly. But besides that, the Rebbe was not ma'id. There was, I think the first time they put words to that niggin was Purim Tashim and Beis. Purim Tashim and Beis was the Yidua. The Rebbe asked for one volunteer to say L'chaim Ad Liyada.
Purim Tashim and Beis is where you and me met. That video, that clip of that Russian niggin.
Yeah.
Is where you and I met. So, yes, that's very special. And you pointed it out then that the second they added words to it, the second they added the words "We want Mashiach now," the Rebbe stopped reacting to the song.
He stopped. He was looking around. So I remember one year, again, I don't remember which year it was. Something like, again, one of the mems, I don't remember which year. Mem Hey, Mem Vogel, Mem Zayin, I read them. They're singing this niggin. We want Mashiach now. And I see the Rebbe starting from his left. The Rebbe looks at every single person in the shul. I'm on that side. So I'm almost at the end of the round. And I say to myself, oy vey, the Rebbe is trying to see if we really mean it. That's what it is. I really want to meet. And the Rebbe was looking at every single person. And he looked all the way around to the last person standing on the bleacher near the Aron HaKodesh on this side. And then he looked back again. And every single, did not clap, did not move his hand, nothing. And he looked at every single person in the shul. When he finished looking at everybody twice, he turned around, was the end of the Lakafah. That was it. Purim and Hey, by the way, the same thing happened. They started singing this thing, and they made freilachs that everybody, somebody should sing, somebody should say L'chaim Ad Liyada, and everybody should say L'chaim. They started singing this niggin, and they made freilachs. And as soon as they started singing, we want Mashiach now, they took a siddur, Bracha Achreina, it was over. Very interesting thing.
Can I try to play that video right now? You mind? I'm going to try to play that video. The video that we connected with, okay? Let me see if I can get it to play. Give you a break. Can you see it?
See.
Okay, let's
it's
see.
Not moving, but I can see.
No, I didn't play it. Let's see if it works. You can hear it?
No,
You can't hear it?
no.
All right, what was the trick? How to get the sound to play?
Unplug your headphones.
You have to, before you go on there, you have to click something.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see if it works now. Okay. Can you hear it now?
Yes. Not clear, the sound. I can't hear.
Can't hear it?
No,
Hmm.
maybe my sound is low. I don't know.
Okay.
You can't hear?
Okay. It was a nice machshava.
Yeah.
But as much as the Rebbe didn't react to the words Yom Mashiach now, but to the Russian words, which is
When
videos.
adapted it to the Russian niggun. We don't Mashiach now. The other one, the Rebbe started so many times himself. And
No, but the Russian words to that niggun, the Russian words ivodye.
oh yeah, but that's not what we want Mashiach now.
No, not at all. It's a little bit the opposite of Yom Mashiach now, actually.
I wouldn't say opposite.
It's a little bit the opposite. I mean, it's a more of afal pishiyisma mea kind of thing.
Fire will not be burnt and water will not be drowned.
Yeah. So when you reminded me that when we met in 770,
Yeah.
you told me that there's a story for every tile.
I want to make a correction. First of all, we were studying upstairs, not downstairs.
Yeah, down upstairs. Yeah. That's
So
what
there's
said.
less tiles there.
Okay.
Secondly, to be standing there is different than me standing here and trying to remember the tiles.
Well, I'm not asking you for a story for every tile.
Yeah, I know.
I'll have Rachmanis. But how did you end up spending so much time in 770? Pashut Begashmias. Were you studying in 770 for many years or visiting all the time?
3 years. As a Memdalad, Memhei, Memvav. And the Memvav I got married, and then I was in Köln, Memzayin. And I moved out in the middle of winter Memches.
So during those 3 years, you made it your business to be in 770.
Wasn't 770. Besides Pesach. Pesach I went home. And I missed the first sikh of Takana of the Rambam. When the Rebbe said to learn Rambam. That was in Achash Pesach. Whatever. Anyway, I don't know what to say. You have any questions? I don't know which track to go on.
I want to know. I mean, you talk about. I want to know the happiest moments that you remember with the Rebbe. I want to know if you remember the Rebbe laughing, smiling, aufgelegt. Good, happy moments with the Rebbe. Besides Simchas Torah, which you described, by the way, the idea that you can't describe Simchas Torah, the process of describing why Simchas Torah is indescribable is already a description. Is also something.
Yeah.
Yes, Ashlila is also a yediyah. So I have to thank you very much for that. That's very, very, it's very real. But besides Simchas Torah, there must have been special moments when you saw the Rebbe in a exuberant mood, or with people that made him smile. V'chulu.
Yeah, but it wasn't too often.
Yeah.
I'll tell you personally, just as a personal preference, people like different pictures of the Rebbe. I was always very choosy, even pictures. Paintings, I don't like. They don't seem real to me. And even pictures, I'm very choosy which pictures I like. But I'll say there are certain times when the Rebbe smiles. I mean, the truth is, the first Fabring I was there, the Rebbe smiled to me. I picked up my cup, Tzila Chaim. It's the first time in my life I'm ever by a Fabring. And I have no idea if the Rebbe is saying to me or to someone next to me, behind me. I don't know. I pick up my cup and I'm holding it. I see the Rebbe nodding in my direction, but I don't know if it's to me or not. And I see the Rebbe nodding again, and I still didn't know. And then the Rebbe smiled. And then I felt, for some reason, I felt that it was to me. It was the only time in my life the Rebbe smiled. And I'll give you a proof for it. I'll tell you something else, even though it's nothing to do with this. But personally, I like pictures of the Rebbe serious. Because by me, I always saw the Rebbe serious. By Farbrengen, he's serious. By davening, he's serious. I mean, basically, the Rebbe is serious. So that's what reminds me more of the Rebbe. But there was one time, it was a Nisan Tafshin Nun. My daughter was then 2 years, just over 2 years, 2 years and 3 months. And the Rebbe was giving out dollars every month in Donnerstück almost. I was there for Nisan. I was living then in Bogota, Colombia. And anyway, I went over to the one day after Mincha, I'm holding my daughter in my hand. I go over to the Rebbe. The Rebbe gives her $1, gives me $1, and the Rebbe smiles. I knew the Rebbe smiled to her, not to me. But I started smiling out of happiness that the Rebbe was smiling to my daughter. As soon as I smiled, like a switch, the Rebbe became immediately serious. I said, oh. Next time I go over, Halt Zachaim. 2 days later, the Rebbe gave up dollars again after Mincha. I went over my daughter again, and I say to myself, control yourself. The Rebbe smiled to her. I started walking backwards. I must have got halfway to the bima, and the Rebbe was still smiling at her. I was amazed. And I mentioned to a bacher there, going over to the Rebbe every second day, but he says, what do you mean? Such a smile? He says, that's the biggest smile I've seen the whole Tafshin Nun. He says, that was such a smile. So, of course. He says, when you have holding your daughter like that, you're allowed to go to the Rebbe for dollars whenever you want. I'll tell you another kiruv that the Rebbe gave her. To me, it was amazing. It was one night by Ma'ariv. It was Nissen. The shul downstairs is half empty. And she was sleeping. A 2-year-old kid in a stroller, sleeping. So I put her next to the bima. And I was standing on the other side. The Rebbe comes in, goes like this to the niggin, looks down at the stroller to see who it is like. And as the Rebbe was walking past her, he was looking down. And as she is sleeping in the stroller, the Rebbe goes to sleep. And then continues. So Bacher Glasman, today is in Shliach in Riga. And he says to me, you see, du darfst Tom Deins. She's sleeping something else. You have to do your job. And the hair, whatever. Anyway, a very Freilich Shabbos, I remember. It's Mamish, it reminded me of the stories he used to tell of the early years by the Rebbe's Fabring. Yeah, you hear the tapes, Purim Tashin Tezayin, Purim Tashin Chai. It was Shabbos after Purim, Tashin Memhe. And to begin, I would say the end of Purim that year was Thursday night was Fabrengen. At the end of Fabrengen, the Rebbe said that whoever wants to say L'chaim or Mashka, I wouldn't take Zrizos. And I'd like to be Matzia, the Rebbe says that one person should say Ad L'yada to be Yaitze everybody else. Everybody's trying to grab L'chaim from wherever they can. And I was waiting to see, who's going to say L'chaim to be Yaitze everybody. And it didn't happen. So I'm wondering if the Rebbe continued from that, something was missing. It was Fabrengen, a surprise Fabrengen, 2 days after Purim. Tez Zayin other. The Rebbe starts talking about the Gemara. There's a question of the Gemara. Why can't we read the Megillah on the 16th or the 17th of Adar? And the answer is because the pasuk says La Yaver, you can't go past the 15th. So you lay in the Megillah only till the 14th, and you Yerushalayim the 15th, and that's it. You can't lay anymore. But nevertheless, the Rebbe says, since a question the Gemara, Kasha the Gemara is also a Torah, is also. Therefore, it seems like the 16th and 17th have a stronger connection to Purim than the rest of Adar, even though the whole month it says, the whole month was changed to Simcha. But nevertheless, these days have a stronger connection to Purim. And then, after the Sikha, there was talking, some people say, L'chaim, they ever turn around to his name Steinmetz. He used to write poems in the Chabad magazine at one time. And they were told to say L'chaim in a big cup. They was like looking at him from the corner of his eye, making sure that he finishes the cup. And as they finished, they ever started like applauding him, so to speak. He finished his cup. The next Sikha, the Rebbe says that there are people who their job is to write the Sefer Torah. A Sefer, it says, you have to be very, very careful. If Chas Hashem, you write a Reish instead of a Dalet, or a Dalet instead of a Reish, you macher v'olamis. Therefore, it says the Rebbe comes a Sefer, and even on Purim, you have to be very careful. You can't say L'chaim, so you shouldn't Chas Hashem be macher v'olamis. Comes the Shabbos after Purim, Shabbos you can't write anyway. So now he can say L'chaim. And I'm hoping that the Sefer who I'm talking about will not cause me dafka to say Shmoi v'Shem Imai, especially it says Negeh Imai lately. So that time Zirkin was saying Kaddish for his mother. As soon as the Rebbe finished the Sikha, the Rebbe looks up at the bleachers. So Rabbi Zirkin takes a small little cup, and the Rebbe goes, like, who are you making fun of, a little cup? So immediately somebody gave him a big cup, say L'chaim, the Rebbe goes like this, say a second time. And then the next Sikha, the Rebbe started talking, the same question there is about a Sefer is also about a Rav. You have a Rav, he's sitting in a whole Purim, his community is going into him, and they see he's so nichter, he's so sober a whole Purim, that even his accent in English is exactly perfect. He's a very important Rav. He gets questions from all over the world, not just in New York. So therefore, how could you, he can't dare risk it to say L'chaim. If this is the way the Rav acts, imagine how the people in his community acted. But now he's not among his community. The Rebbe was referring to Rav Ram Hecht. Now he's not among his community. And he's whatever. So then he should make sure to say L'chaim ad liyada, and if there'll be enough room, if it's possible, he can even go and dance. And I hope also he won't force me to say his name, but will immediately say L'chaim. And by the way, there are mentions of the Sfardim. They were starting in the middle of the Sikha, they were talking a whole thing about the Sfardim, and the Sfardim were disturbing them for Mi Yehudi to be fixed. And anyway, so immediately he got up right after the Sikha and he said L'chaim, 2 big cups. Then another Sikha, the Rebbe says, another Sikha, the Rebbe says that if a Rav of the Sfardim has to say L'chaim, what about all the Sfardim? Why dafka the Rav of the Sfardim? All the Sfardim should say L'chaim, and also the Zeicha B'Goyrel should say L'chaim. So the Rebbe said L'chaim. So all the Sfardim started saying L'chaim. Yeah. All the Sfardim started saying L'chaim. Again, Freilich. Later, after was Maimer, and after was the Kashas and Rashi. After the Kashas and the Rashi Sikha, so the Rebbe says, many times the Rebbe asks in a Rashi Sikha, the Rebbe asks a Klotz Kasha. So the Rebbe says from one Klotz Kasha to another Klotz Kasha. If we're talking about the Sfardim, what about the old Ashkenazim? It says in the Megillah, Yeshnei Am Echad. There has to be one nation. Everybody has to be together. Therefore, everyone should say L'chaim. What should the Rebbe saying? Everyone should say L'chaim Atal Yada. And here the Rebbe got really, really freilach, and the Rebbe was making the niggin freilach, and the Rebbe was like, and the Eilam started to say L'chaim. And there wasn't enough wine. The guys went upstairs to bring more wine. I remember Marshal Berlipsker. He went upstairs. They brought wine. Later, there was enough wine for everybody. They emptied out Mayor Halleck's locker upstairs, and they brought out wine for everybody. I remember Berlipsker climbing through the crowd, carrying 2 cases of wine. And the Rebbe looked at him with such a pleased expression. There's just a look in the Rebbe's eyes. Such a pleased expression. It was interesting. Now, I don't remember a lot of details. I don't remember, but I just remember it seemed to me like the Rebbe was reacting to the crowd, like the stories I used to hear about the Yidus. I'll give you one example. Osher Sasonkin, he took a lot of mashke mistama. He was like quite frail. He bangs on the table. The Rebbe talked about Zocher Begeirel. Ich bin der Zocher Begeirel from Rusland. And he starts talking about his memories when they interrogated him in prison. Well, it sounded interesting, but then he switched to Russian in the middle, so I didn't understand. But what he started to say in Yiddish, it was good. The Rebbe was quiet, let him talk. He spoke for a few minutes, I don't know how long. It was quiet. And then the Rebbe continued the next sikha. And in the middle of the sikha, Osher Sasonkin started making a shtickle tumul over there where he was. I don't know exactly what he was doing. The Rebbe stops in the middle of the sikha, looks at him. Ich hab euch nicht gestört in Eier Drasche, stört mir nicht in mein Drasche. And he's like, you wouldn't expect to hear it in my days. The Rebbe used to speak like that in the old years, but it's like, it was so frail that it was like, in the middle, the old Sperlin. Remember that? I don't know if you remember the hat he used to wear. It was like a cross between a Bieber hit and a Samata hit. So it was like, the Satmars wear a wide, flat hat. They also wear a Bieber hit, a high one. This was wide and high. So it didn't look like a regular Bieber hit. It was wider. And it didn't look like a Satmar one because it was very high. Well, that's what he used to wear. It was what it felt, that material. And he started dancing there with Osher Sasonkin. Osher Sasonkin used to wear a flat cap. Not the Russian one like Mendel Putavas. The other kind of flat cap. A lot of people wear this flat cap. Not like a policeman. Can't hear you. You're mute. All right. So he used to wear...
Not a casquette?
Casquette, whatever, yeah. I mean, in English, you call it a flat cap, in England at least. A cap which comes to a peak.
Okay.
Not like Remember Futafas. It was different. A lot of people wear it, especially in the summer, So the Rosh Hashanah would wear that. So they switched hats. And they were dancing next to the Rebbe's chair. It's the only place with his room. The Rebbe turns to Razil Chazanov. He should join them. He should also dance with. He was like, a yachas to at least to the older people, which the Rebbe used to do years before, and they started feeling comfortable. I guess that's why Osher Sasonkin took the great guy to start talking. The Rebbe was mamish so frail, mamish frail.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why is there no video of Rosh Chodesh Kislev Tavshin Lamed Ches? How does it come? Did nobody know that Rebbe was going home? Were you there?
I wasn't there. I was in Yisroel. But it was very sudden. I heard that people did not know. It was a sudden thing. And I would imagine in those years, you heard about it, you ran to be there. Who had movie cameras anyway? The Goldsteins. How many people had?
Yeah, I mean, not many people.
The
people who had it. How do you miss a moment like that? What did Rebbe Tzachai Mushka said about it?
Yeah, but afterwards, not before.
But Simchas Torah, you were there. Shmini Atzeres, you were there.
No.
But you weren't there that year.
No. I was there Lamed Zayin, and next time I was there was Mem. I wasn't there that year. And I heard about her. I was at Yisroel. We were in touch with her. From then, Yisroel became so much closer to what's happening with the Rebbe. The details and the connection became very, very strong. Also, three groups also helped.
What do you mean from then?
From Lamed Ches, the connection became very strong. People wanted to know information, details, what's news, what's happening with the Rebbe. It became a lot closer connection than before.
Yeah.
I remember a year before, Yossi Hecht in Eilat was one of the shluchim. I was in Yisroel for 6 years. So I wasn't there when the first shluchim came, Lamed Zayin, I was there in Yisroel. And I remember Yossi Hecht complaining, he says, there was a Fabrengen yesterday, and it's already Sunday night, nobody knows what they ever spoke about on Shabbos. So there was no connection. Yeah, the Hanach will come. Really, you want to wait till end of the week to hear what they ever spoke about on Shabbos?
So how many Yechidus did you have totally?
2. I was twice alone with in the Rebbe's room.
Yeah.
And then I had Yechidus Klolos twice.
But the two times you were there was Lamed Zayin?
Lamed Zayin and Mem.
Lamed Zayin and Mem.
Yeah.
So what happened during those Yechidus? It's another. By the way, there's another thing. That little clip that came out a few years ago of the Rebbe talking to Rabbi Gorodetsky, right? Benjamin Gorodetsky.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Rebbe is sitting back in his chair, and the Rebbe is stroking his beard. It's so different that it makes you wonder. Yeah, and the Rebbe is going like this exactly, and it makes you wonder. With this idea that the Rebbe going like this, the Sikha once from the Stender, on the front of the Rebbe's Farbrengen Bima, the Rebbe was talking about the Neus Slavchot, why they said Vehu lo yehoya ba'adas koirach.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe was saying how Moshe Rabbeinu recused himself because he was it's a shtickle geya, and the Rebbe was going like the Rebbe was doing this the whole Sikha. You know what I'm talking about? You ever see this?
I don't remember that. I remember the Sikha, but I don't remember that.
So people said that by Farbrengen under the table, the Rebbe was moving his hands all the time. But in Sikhs in public, the Rebbe didn't move his hands at all when they were on top of the bima. But by this one, the Rebbe was doing this the whole time. That was very, very interesting.
Actually, I remember one Rashi Sikha.
Yeah.
It was amazing. A Shabbos and a Rashi Sikha, and the Rebbe starts going like this.
Above the table?
Above the table. It was amazing to see. And the Rebbe's face was shining. It was backwards and forwards. I can't remember which Shabbos it was. And Mom, I never saw anything. I never saw it. And then, as he finished the Rashi, and I went to the Zohar, back under the table. I remember that. But the first Simchas Torah was there, Lamed Vov. By day, I didn't have a good place. I stood behind the Rebbe. I saw the Rebbe's hands working under the table the whole time. I remember one word from there, and under the table, there was going like, sie herum geringelt, Chevrein. He makes a circle with his finger. There was talking with his hands the whole time.
Under the table.
Under the table.
So with this conversation with Benjamin Gorodetsky, the Rebbe is doing this, the Rebbe is stroking his beard, and the Rebbe is making with his mustache. Anyway, so it's another insight into how people describe the Rebbe in Yechidus. It's almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable, and I mean literally unbelievable, because it's so different than the Rebbe in public.
Right. But I would say that's not a regular Yechidus. I've heard different stories of people where the Rebbe would sort of say, Ad kan is Yechidus, now I want to talk to you. There were such cases. And they see the Rebbe like relaxes, leans back in his chair, different situation. So I have heard of that.
So what were yours like, Yechidus?
I mean, just the fear of going to Yechidus, the pachad, you're going to the Rebbe's room. I mean, one of my friends says to me that day, "You're going to Yechidus tonight, no? Look at your shoes." It was raining a whole day. I couldn't even polish the shoes as much as I tried. Anyway, yeah, he went to mikveh again. The mikveh was open Yechidus night. It was open again. And you tried to make a chalas that day, you know.
Guys fasted.
Standing in line. Anyway, it was Rosh Chodesh also, so I didn't fast. But you try to eat less. No, it's Rosh Chodesh. You're not allowed to fast. But the Klal people didn't fast. See, the Amalek Chassidim, the stories they tell us, Yechidus was during the day. So they would fast until after Yechidus. But here, if you have to fast from the beginning of the day till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning when you're going to Yechidus, I don't know if that's the Indian. But I remember a little grown-up telling some Bachrim that the Rebbe did not agree with the fasting, at least the drink, at least, he said. But I definitely didn't fast, but I remember hardly eating. I was just so nervous also, I couldn't. And standing in line, waiting to go inside the Rebbe's room, and pulled from that line of Bachrim, I happened to be the first. And before me, there was a balabas. And he was taking a long time. And labels opening the door and closing, opening and closing, trying to hint to the guy.
Where are you standing? Where are you standing to wait?
I'm standing, mamish, next to the Rebbe's door, waiting to go in. I'm next to go into the Rebbe's room.
And where's the line?
Where does the line
behind you? Where does the line snake behind you?
It wasn't such a big line because it went according to numbers, I suppose. I'm not sure exactly, but it was like we were a bunch of Bachrim, and I guess I don't know. For some reason, I was the first in this line of Bachrim.
No, I'm saying if you were on the appointment to go into Yechidus, you didn't show up at 770 and go against that wall. Where did you go? If you weren't going to be the next 5, 10, 20 people into the small zal, where did you hang out?
I don't know. I was in the hallway, I really don't know.
How many people were on a list to go into Yechidus on a regular Yechidus night? You know?
I really don't know. I mean, according to my father's story, it was. I think he said he was supposed to be 28, and he would have ended up going in like after 12. And in the end, they switched him to number 10. But when I'm talking about is already Yechidus was so much shorter and so. I don't know. Yeah. The truth is, I don't know.
Okay.
I never thought about this.
Okay.
I just remember standing up. It was a bunch of Bachrim in Ganei Tachten. We just had a circle around from the Rebbe's door, going round and back to the door of Ganei Tachten. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
There were more. I think it was a kfutza of Bachrim was supposed to go, and then there'd be another kfutza. It didn't really make much difference among Bachrim if you go first or second. You know. That's how I know. Anyway, right in front of me, there's a balabas inside there. I have no idea who he was. And labels opening the door and closing, open, closing, and more opening than closing. And I'm hearing the Rebbe's voice, and I'm saying to myself, it's a private conversation. I'm not supposed to be listening to this. So I didn't pay attention. I heard the Rebbe's voice, but I didn't hear. And there's something that it's my own voice repeating, and it's disturbing me very much. There's nobody in there. So I'm supposed to go into Yechidus. So standing, this person is there, and he's talking, and I hear there his voice, and the door's opening and closing. Finally, Label goes inside, and Pashut, he pulls the guy out. I mean, pulled, whatever. He basically guided him out. When I came out of Yechidus, I heard them arguing. I heard them arguing with Label. But whatever, that's not my business. It's disturbing me over there. I hear my own voice double. And it's disturbing.
Not done yet. What's happening now?
As met zijn great.
Yeah. So anyway, so my turn to go in next. So he opens the door, he pulls the guy out. The label takes me by the arm to guide me in. So I'm terrified. So there's 3 hachanas he's supposed to make, and I was told by other people he's supposed to make 3 hachanas. One of them is supposed to wear a gartel. So that I put on, because you do that before. Not only supposed to knock on the door, supposed to kiss the mezuzah, and you're supposed to say shechiyama. Forget about it. I was so nervous and I forgot everything. First, it wouldn't be shy. Even if I would have remembered to knock on the door, the door's open, label's pushing me in. So it's not shy to knock on the door. I forgot to kiss the mezuzah. And usually I do kiss mezuzahs when I go inside a room, but I was like completely in shechiyama. I forgot it. Whatever. And I see the Rebbe's facing the door, and the Rebbe's stretching his hand out. And as you can't see on the camera, but as I'm coming closer, and the Rebbe's like raising himself up and sticking his hand out. To me, it looked like the Rebbe's sort of hiding the fact that he raises himself by stretching his hand. Because he's not standing up for a bacher. He's standing because this is what Bachram said, they heard, whatever. Because a person comes into Yechidus, especially the first time, the Rebbe's makasher his neshama with the person's neshama, and that's why the Rebbe gets up. That's what they said. Anyway, so I see the Rebbe's hand outstretched in front of me, and I got this guidance from Leibel Gron to go in. I almost ran in, and I almost knocked over a chair. And there's 2 chairs in front of the Rebbe's desk, and another chair further back near the door. So I almost knocked over the chair. For the last second, I realized there's a chair there. And I go inside, and I give the Rebbe the zettel. The Rebbe takes the zettel and opens it up. And he puts on his glasses like this. He perches, the edge of his nose. And the Rebbe puts a pencil and makes a mark next to a question. I had a question, which yeshiva to go to. He makes a mark there. Made a mark somewhere else, I don't know where. Then that was horizontal. And then he made a vertical line next to my name and a vertical line next to the name of the whole family, my parents and my sisters. Then the Rebbe takes off his glasses. The Rebbe continues to look at the zettel. When the guy was to schreibst, verstehst du dich? Couldn't answer. My tongue was somewhere in my boots, but I nodded. When the guy was to schreibst, a Platz zu lernen, das darf sich durchreden, the timing of the roof mit anholen.
Say that again.
When the guy was to schreibst, wegen a Platz zu lernen, das darf sich durchreden, the timing of the roof with the Hanhala. You have to discuss the reasons with Hanhala. Which is interesting because we had already discussed. And my father said he wants to send me to Rumah. And even though Rabbi Sodek was not of the opinion I should go there, but my father said it's closer, you could bring him home, it's Hanukkah, whatever, it's closer to home. So Rabbi Sodek said, I don't really agree with you, but you want to send him there, send him there. And here, the Rebbe says you have to speak the timing of the roof. Immediately, I sent an express letter to my parents after the Yechidus the next day. So my father tells Rabbi Sudek, what the Rebbe told me, he says, see, often Ruach HaKodesh from the Rebbe didn't say you have to discuss it on Hala, because you discussed it already. The Rebbe said the timing, the reasons. I say your reasons are no good. Send them to Lud. That was even more interesting what the Rebbe told me right after. Then the Rebbe looks at me again. Als gekrogen dollars by the Fabrengen. Immediately, I think in my mind, which Fabrengen, Erev Rosh Hashanah, Yud Gimel Tishrei, but I got. So I nodded. The Rebbe opens up the drawer, top drawer, pulls out $1. Das up as Ausbeiten of Franken, Eidewes gehen dort. switch it to francs if you'll go there. Or the voodoo is gains als dort überbeiten mit Kessel Medina ahi, meistens zijn $1 en geben het stock. The Eibusher zal die benchen, zijn chassid. I wrote something, somebody once told me for some stupid reason that you're not supposed to write chassid Yerushalayim in Lam. But the Rebbe didn't know. Whatever. You know, things which people tell you, you know, now you get a little older. So you write what you feel like writing, but whatever. You know, so whatever I wrote, that's what the Rebbe answers. Chassid, Lamden, just learn Bahasmod Shkida, this I remember for sure. I also wrote in that zettel that my parents should have nachas for me, the Rebbe should have nachas for me. So the Rebbe says, Tata and Mama is all from the Chassidish nachas. I remember that came out very strongly, you know, the Rebbe Shin without the Rebbe without teeth. The Shin comes out very strongly, like so they were saying. Tata and Mama is all from the Chassidish nachas, and Allah is all from the nachas. I understood Allah, the Rebbe's not going to say me. I asked that the Rebbe should have nachas for me, so that's what the Rebbe said. Allah's not for me nachas. And then the Rebbe stretches over to give me the $1. So I took the $1 and stood at the end of the Yechidus to start back out. It's a blank. From when I took the $1 till I got out of the Rebbe's room, a blank. I don't know how I got out of the room. It's like I was out. Suddenly I was out. No, I don't know. I just blanked out. And maybe later on opened the door. I have no idea. I don't know how I got out of the room. That was the first Yechidus.
What do you do when you get out? What did you do when you go out of Yechidus?
Actually, you go look for a quiet table to write down what the Rebbe told you.
And you remember it, obviously.
Yeah, even though I still wasn't sure of one thing, I think then I remember.
Did you make a copy of your note of your zettel? Because you knew you weren't going to get it back from the Rebbe.
No, I didn't write that much anyway. I didn't think of it. Maybe I did have a rough copy. It's possible. You know, the first, you know, I wrote it over again. So, yeah, so maybe I did, but I definitely didn't keep it. I don't know. I don't have it now. I have the envelope where I put the $1. That I do. Right. Second time Yechidus is also interesting. Tashim Mem, when I went in, the Rebbe asked me the same question. First day Yiddish. So, then you weren't allowed to write anything. Only your name. It's after Lamed Ches. So you only write your name. So I write my family's names. Yeah, well, what do you have? 5, 6 people in your family? You can write family names. So as soon as I went in, I gave the Rebbe zettel. First is Yiddish, and the Rebbe started giving me a bracha. Right now, I can't remember the lashon. I have some of it written down. I have an envelope, but I have the $1 from the Yechidus, so I have them written down. But somebody disturbed me right after I came out of Yechidus. I partially forgot. Whatever, two lines out of Yechidus. But there's something interesting. Before I went in, the second time, so somebody was standing with a watch, whatever, interesting guy. And he's standing. From when the door of the Rebbe's room closes till the door opens, the Bacher comes out. So he's counting. 45 seconds, 45 seconds, 45 seconds. Oh, 35 seconds. So 35. From 45 seconds, we're down to 35 seconds. After that, I went in. So I went in after it already went down to 35 seconds.
What, that was the time allotted?
That was how long it took, Lepoil.
Oh.
He's not talking about, he didn't speak to the Rebbe anyway. The Rebbe said what he wanted to say. You think, again, in the Rebbe's room, it's timeless. You don't feel the time when you're in the Rebbe's room. You have no idea of the time. It feels like a year. It feels like a minute. You can't measure it in time.
Balabatim, a lot of Balabatim, in other words, people from outside Lubavitch, when they write their stories, a lot of them write that exact sense, that the Yechidus ended and they can't believe it. They were there for an hour and a half, or they were there for, can believe it.
Yeah, but that's, I can't believe it's an hour and a half from talking to you. I don't know. No, it's different. I'm saying, no, you feel the timelessness in both ends. Length or shortness, it's, you feel how you can't measure it in our sense of time. That's what I mean to say.
So you're saying
that
that
when you got $1 from the Rebbe, it was the same thing.
Yeah. You're saying that that generally in Yechidus, the Rebbe's demeanor was not that different than in public, as opposed to certain Yechiduses where the Rebbe was more casual.
It's possible.
Rebbe was wearing a gartel?
Was I wearing a gartel?
The Rebbe.
The Rebbe, no. They say one of the simonim of Yechidus, the Rebbe did not wear a gartel.
So,
in fact, when Yechidus Klala started, they say that they wanted to know, is it like Yechidus, is like a Sicha? So one of the simonim was if the Rebbe was wearing a gartel or not. Another simon is if the Rebbe's hands on top of the table or under the table. And both simonim of Yechidus were there. The Rebbe came out without the gartel, and the Rebbe's hands were on top of the table. And most Yechidus Klala, I just remember one time that one hand was on top of the table, one hand was under. But in general, the Rebbe's hands were on top of the table. So Yechidus Klala was different.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Talking about Yechidus Klala, or in general Yechidus, Orchim used to, you go to Yechidus Klala after every Yom Tov. And that Yechidus was broadcast. The whole world could hear it. But the Yechidus to Chassanim was not allowed to be broadcast. And they said, this is the rumor going around them, I think I heard it from a Shemer also, that the feeling or the way the Rebbe treated it, I could say, was more like Yechidus. But when I went to Yechidus Klala for my Chasana, I felt mamish the same way I had felt going inside the Rebbe's room. I'll give you a dogma. Toshim Men, when I came out of Yechidus, and I was very annoyed because I wanted to write down what the Rebbe said, and somebody's nudging me. Ezem Ispar, what number were you? So I answered him, but because of that, I forgot 2 lines of what the Rebbe told me. But I went outside, and I went to the Zal to sit down and write down what the Rebbe told me. And somebody sees my face is red. He says, why is it so red? Yashar Ma'atanur. He comes straight out of the oven. Okay. But I had the same feeling when I had the Yechidus before the Chasana. The Yechidus Klala, well, I didn't have before then, I had after that. But it was different. It was a different feeling. Yechidus or Chasanim, you felt like when you went inside the Rebbe's room, to a certain extent.
What was the difference?
What?
What was the difference?
Just the feeling, I don't know. Just when you went over to the Rebbe, it was something, I don't know.
I heard a story from Shaul Wilhelm. You know him?
Yeah. Norway.
Yeah. Maybe you heard the story from him, but I just heard the story from him. He told that when he was a kid, without all the pratim that he told, but just the point is that when he was a kid, he went into Yechidus with his father, and his father had, while they were waiting for Yechidus, his father had learned that day's chumash with him, or that week's chumash by Yishlach. So when he went into Yechidus, the Rebbe said to him, what's this week's parsha? I didn't get from him. The Rebbe started speaking Yiddish, and then the Rebbe realized he doesn't understand Yiddish, so the Rebbe started speaking English, but he didn't understand English either. So the Rebbe said, "In welche Sprach kann man sich durchredet?" Anyway, so I don't remember which language the Rebbe was talking to him, but the Rebbe said to him, "What's the name of the parsha?" And he said, "Vayishlach." He just learned it. It was very clear in it. He was 8.
Uh-huh.
The Rebbe said, "Was meint Vayishlach?" So he said, "Und het geschickt, wer het geschickt? Yaakov Avinu. Zu wem hat geschickt? Esav. Was hat geschickt? Malachim. Was meint Malachim?" And he says, "I remember, I just learned it 10 minutes ago." Rashi. So he says to the Rebbe, an 8-year-old, Rashi zogt Malachim mamish. So the Rebbe gives him a big smile and says to him, "Ich weiß was Rashi sagt, aber was sagst du?" I'm telling you, he told the story. He told the story in the middle of a Farbrengen, and his point was that the whole emphasis on bittul is a little bit shaloi kefi hakavana. It's obviously bittul is important, but the Rebbe will wissen was sagst du.
Yeah.
And he made a big deal out of it, and it was very geschmack. I mean, an 8-year-old. Ich weiß was Rashi sagt, aber was sagst du? What does it mean? What did he say?
Yeah.
It's very, very rich. The whole Yechidus world.
They say they would love to verheer the kids. And generally, they say that the Rebbe would ask a question until he came to a point where he didn't know. The Rebbe stopped.
He was nice.
I had a different kind of kids already. I was a bacher. I was 15, 18.
It's very interesting what you're saying that when you started smiling, the Rebbe stopped smiling. It's very funny with your
It's not
daughter.
as if I heard it from other people also. The Rebbe smiles to who he wants to smile.
I have to try to play that video one more time because it's so important. Okay, let me try one more time. I won't try any more after this. Okay, I promise. Yeah.
What's this that you have to click on share my computer audio?
Yeah.
Play a.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try this again. You can see?
See, yeah.
You hear? Can you hear?
Yeah, I hear. Yeah. Meredith. Listening to this in Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, 1 second. I'm sorry.
Muted?
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
I was listening to this live in Eretz Yisrael. And the Mashpia, Gurevich, H.K. Gurevich. Ja, dieses. Am Anfang wir sagen, der Mashiach sitzt bei Verbringen, the rebel sit by Verbringen, go like this, Mashiach is Shidda. That's what he's going to do. Then we were like, what is going on over there? You hear the noise. You can't hear a niggin. You see the noise. And Kazen came onto the hookup. The ganze Elam state. You notice the Elam slowly started rising one after another. It started standing up.
Even the old people.
And then, so Kazen says, the Rebbe sits noch halt auf dem Benkel. The Rebbe is still sitting. The Rebbe did not stand up. The whole Elam stood up.
So how long was it before you saw the video of it?
Years.
Ah, it must have been so exciting.
Yeah, I didn't see it till, actually, not so many years, but a few years. For me, in my mind, it was years, because I left Eretz Yisrael, I came to America. No, I would say, Be'erich Mem Vav Mem Zayin.
That's years.
Yeah, years. I mean, not so many years, but years.
Yeah. This is the greatest Tainuk. This was very, very good, Rabbi Vogel. And I don't know if you appreciate the value of what you did here for the last almost 2.5 hours. I think that we probably barely scratched the surface. But
I'll tell you the truth, I do this often with Bachram, whenever I can. None of the things now I've told are, sort of new. I share. I share my memories. I believe a lot in sharing memories, and keeps it alive for myself and for other people. So.
Very much so.
It's to share.
Very much so. All right. I will share with you all of the feedback that comes in. People are going to have a lot of hana from it.
That's a shame.
And Mitzvah Hashem will werden sich weiter sein.
That's a shame. All right, Ayasha Koyach, for joining me in your endeavors.
Oh, 1 second. I need to ask you one last question. I forgot that before you go. Who is Rabbi Grossman?
Who, the chief rabbi of Meglaimic?
No, who's Rabbi Grossman is connected with your Shver, Rabbi Gurkov?
Grossman.
Make any sense?
I don't remember. No.
Who's Yankel Gurkov?
Gurkov, that's my Shver's father.
Yeah. Rabbi Yankel Gurkov learned, you knew him?
Sure, I knew him, yeah.
And he learned in
Came
Lubavitch?
to my chasna. Yankel Gurkov, my Shver's father.
Yeah.
My Shver is called Reb Shalom Ber Gurkov.
Right. So he came to
He
your wedding.
was 40 years in Montreal Yeshiva. Now he's here in Postal.
Yeah. But Rabbi Yankel Gurkov, Rabbi Yankel Gurkov learned in Lubavitch?
No, he was younger than that. He was learning yeshiva in Kharkov. He met the Rebbe when the Rebbe came to Kharkov. The Rebbe came together with his father and his brother. His brother needed some medical treatment then. I don't remember how long they were in Kharkov, a few weeks or maybe even 2 months, I don't know. But and the Rebbe went to the yeshiva there. The Rebbe visited the yeshiva. He asked the Bachram some questions and learning. Rabbi Yankel Gurkov was one of them. The Rebbe asked him a question. The Rebbe came over to his table. He was learning with someone called Yudel Kalasha. He was a son-in-law of Rameir Simcha Chaim. The Rebbe came over to them, and they were learning, and the Rebbe asked him a question. My Shver says to me, from the question, The way the Rebbe put the question, he says, this is nicht kompashet mensch. He said, the way the Rebbe asked the question. Then there was somebody else there, I can't remember who it was, maybe Shimanovich, I'm not sure who it was, somebody else learning there. The Rebbe went over to their table, see what they're learning, and the Rebbe asked them something, which they didn't know. The Rebbe says, Azay Lekman. But, yeah.
So there's Rabbi Grossman who was with Dubov and Lubavitch, and then they met up in London.
Reb Shmuel Grossman. Reb Shmuel Grossman. He was the son of Reb Osher Nikolaeva.
Oh.
Yeah. I remember him well. But he wouldn't talk. Would not talk. He'd sit by the Kiddush every Shabbos and wouldn't open his mouth. One time he asked me a favor, or somebody else asked me a favor, to carry a few pounds of matzahs from Beis Lubavitch to his house, which is a few doors away. So I'm carrying the matzahs for him. So I said, let me chaparayim. So I asked him, actually, you told me a maisa. So he told me a maisa. That's the only time. He told me a maisa that one time was my Maim Shalano. And the whole Lubavitch used to go, they used to dance. And the Rebbe Rashab was looking at one bacher who was dancing very, very strongly. And the Rebbe Rashab said, Die Yechide tanzt in him. And then Rebbe Shmuel says to me, Ich habe es allein gesehen. Azach was mezekt allein. That's doesn't leave you. You don't forget about it. I remember one time Rabbi Yitzchak Groner from Australia was in London. Because he had a daughter there. Now they live in Australia, Telzner. But so he came to his Rabbi Lubavitch in London, Rabbi Yitzchak Groner. He says, Reb Shmuel, you had the Achrayis. You read Gizen, Reb Handel. He starts describing. You know who Reb Handel was? Handel was a Yid, the Friedrich Rebbe says on him, at Nor Ashmekiton Gehen. And he said, this is a Yid who remembers, who saw Reb Handel and everything else which he saw. Reb Shmuel, you have to achrayis, you have to tell people what you know, what you saw. Didn't help.
He wouldn't talk.
Remained as quiet as before.
he was from Nikolaev, yeah? Yeah. He remembered the Rebbe from Nikolaev?
He remembered, I'm not sure the years, because the Rebbe was 5 years old when they moved. But actually, Rabbi Chaikin, who from Cleveland, heard a number of stories from him privately. He wasn't from Rain. And one time they brought Rabbi Dubov came to London. Rabbi Dubov lived in Manchester. And they brought Rabbi Dubov to Fabrenk for us. So somebody said, go bring Reb Shmuel Grossman also. Bring him. They were chaverim in yeshiva. It's that seer to see two people with old white beards kissing together. It's not seer.
Something about one of them kicked the other?
No, I don't know about kicked. So Reb Shmuel Grossman in the middle, they're sitting there. So Reb Shmuel says to Rabbi Dubov, du gedenkst, so angetan der Stiefel, zu stupen bei Kies. Rabbi Dubov was a very strong man.
Yeah.
My Shver says when he was 70 years old, he would take the English pennies, the old pennies or brown brass, bigger coins, not so small like the cents over here, they're big. And he would bend them with his hands. 70-year-old man. He was strong. Even when he was Fabring with us, he was like 90. He was banging on the table. So he put on shtivos, he put strong boots. He stood his ground and nobody could push him by the Rebbe Rashab's tkiyas. Everybody used to push. Even the Friedrich Rebbe himself used to push by the Rebbe Rashab's tkiyas. Rabbi Dubov didn't want to hear about it. Rabbi Shmuel told him, "You think this thing?" Rabbi Dubov, he didn't want to hear.
I would keep you for another 2.5 hours to hear about the Mendel Futterfast, Rabbi Dubov, and all these people whose fabringings you sat by in London. But we'll keep it for another time. All right, Really, thank you very, very much. Soll sein gesund und stark, and we should hear only good news. Thank you very, very much for this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Gizem.